Pro mechanic.
Oh, that's not good.
Check. Alright. What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to the School of Auto Mechanics, and my name is Hunter Malera. Today we're going to be talking about a baby. This is Andromeda, and this is my 2002 Mustang GT. When I bought it, it had every light on the dash on. And when I mean every light, I mean, think of a light, it was on. It had the engine light, tire pressure sensor, airbag, fuel cap, I mean, every freaking light. And when I bought it, I asked the guy, I said, hey, you know, what's for on the engine light? He said, oh, it's just the O2 sensors, you know, they haven't been changed and they need to be changed. I said, okay, that's no big deal. And so I bought it for about $3,000 cash, and I paid him 20s. And so the guy who sold it to me actually was not the guy who had his name on the title. The name on the title was some dude that I'd never met before. He didn't speak English, and I had to track him down. And it was just an absolute crap show. And long story short, it took about a couple months before this thing was actually plated and registered and insured and all that jazz. It ran okay, you know. When I bought it, it always grinded in third gear. There's a funny way to get into it where it wouldn't grind, but it had a few little kinks with the clutch. And the guy had told me that he just put a brand new stage 2 clutch in there and had the stage 2 short throw shifter, and I was like, okay, you know, that's pretty cool, I like that. The suspension had been completely redone, so that was something I didn't have to worry about, which I was incredibly grateful for. It's got Cobra brakes on the front. And other than that, externally, there's not a whole lot done to the car. Moving on to the engine, when I bought it, it had BBK long tubes, the 78mm BBK throttle body, some cheap-ass intake with the little 4-banger filter. It really didn't have a whole lot of power additives to it. It was pretty much bone stock, and he didn't tell me it had been wrecked, but you could tell that it's been wrecked a few times. There's some cracks in the engine bay, and some of these body panels don't line up. And shortly after I bought it, it started doing what every car that I own does, and that is fall apart. Every single week I was fighting a new problem, whether it was spark plugs or coils or an electrical problem. I think I've spent a good couple $1,000s trying to fix it before it blew up. Just week after week after week. It would die on a Friday, I'd have it running by Sunday. I would Bojangles it to work for a week, and then it would die on Friday and repeat step one. It was awful. And I was spending so much money on it, so much time on it, and you know, I really tried to make it run as is, but that old 4.6, she just, she had her day. Ended up buying a new cold air intake for it, and that intake ran through my wheel well, and that filter popped out right in front of my tire. And right in front of my tire there's in the bumper, there's a little fog light hole, and so air would come through there, and air would also get spun around by the tire. So, you know, air-wise, it was getting incredibly great, cold, quick, fast air that was, you know, not coming from the engine bay. And in a dry condition, it's beautiful. I mean, actually really did make some good power on the car, helped it breathe a little better, and I really enjoyed it. But in the rain, holy hell, I mean, you couldn't drive it. Because all the places that I was getting such good airflow, that fog light hole in the tire and such, instead of it being air, now it's all water. So, you know, the car was sucking in so much freaking water every time I drove it in the rain. I was having to keep the RPM so high to try to burn it all out. And one fateful day on the way home from work, it was raining like absolute hell. It was raining so hard on the highway that, I mean, you couldn't see in front of you. You couldn't see the lines on the road. You couldn't see the shoulder. You couldn't see signs. And so me and probably about 6 other people spread out across the highway, going 30 miles an hour with our hazards on because you just couldn't see. And the car died probably about 6 times on the way home. Just on the highway, it was sucking up so much water it would die. I'd have to put it in neutral, crank it back up, throw it in a third, and just wah-cha-cha-cha, and just try to keep it hot. And I got over back to my side of town, and it wasn't really raining that hard. And I got into my neighborhood, and when I pulled into my neighborhood, I stopped at a stop sign, and the street in front of me was flooded, my left was flooded, and my right was flooded. And the only way out was that U-turn. And so I tried to do a U-turn, and when I did, the car dipped down, and it dipped down on the filter side, and that filter got completely submerged underwater. She sucked up so much freaking water, and she hydrolocked and just stopped. And that was the fateful day that old girl blew up, and she was put off the road for quite some time. After that, you know, I really didn't have any choice. I had to pull the motor, and I had to rebuild it because I was already too deep into it. I couldn't sell it hydrolocked, and I sure as hell wasn't going to make my money back on it. Started the rebuild, and that rebuild was, at first it was going to be, let's just, you know, find some junk parts, put it all back together and make it run. And you know, the more I looked into it, the more I decided, you know, if I'm gonna do a rebuild on this car, I ought to do it right, and I ought to do it the way I want it to. And took the motor out, and when I broke it down, I discovered that it broke 2 rods, or bent 2 rods and broke 1, excuse me. And actually I could show you all that. So she bent 2 rods like this, and broke the other one straight in half, poor girl. It's actually pretty interesting the way that this car broke its rods, because instead of, you know, breaking the rods off and then having you know, one of the pieces shoot off and then you know, go into the side of my block or tear up my crank or, you know, something like that, it hydrolocked so perfectly that it just stopped in place. And the one rod that broke, it broke, but it didn't break off. So the whole motor just locked up and stayed there until I broke it down. I checked out my crank and I checked out the block, and you know, you really couldn't see any scarring or breakage or any kind of like anything you would see on a normal motor that blew up or had a hydrolock or had something like this. So I went ahead and, you know, took the leap of faith, bought a rebuild kit, and went ahead and used my old block and old crank, washed them out, cleaned them as best I could, got the cylinders as clean as I could, and you know, I was actually really surprised to see that the cylinder walls were incredibly clean for a motor that had been locked up like that. Normally you see a lot of scarring and you see a lot of like little nicks and scratches that need to be bored out, but really I didn't see anything too major in there. And so I went ahead and just cleaned everything the best I could, painted all my parts, got the rebuild kit, and my rebuild kit didn't come with rods, and so I went ahead and had to go look for some new rods. And those little stock skinny rods, you know, they're great rods and they're 4/6 rods, but I guess I wanted to just go a little bit bigger. So I went ahead and did some Jegs steel forged rods, and then brand new pistons, brand new rings, all that jazz. And this was actually the first time that I've put a motor together from the ground up. What I do at work is, you know, I get a long block and then I build that long block inside the car and crank it up. And the machine shop builds the motor halfway, if you will. And so this was the first time for me doing everything by myself. And so the whole time I was freaking the hell out, just thinking, oh my God, you know, this better work. I think I did this right. I mean, I double checked, triple checked, and quadruple checked everything. And it was really something. You know, so I got it all put together, and I thought it was really pretty, and I was incredibly proud of it. So I went ahead and signed it. It's got the July 4th date on it for 2020. And putting it back together was, ooh, anything but easy, and it was all stress. Most of the parts that are on it now are all brand new. Brand new injectors, brand new coils. I used the old throttle body because it's actually a pretty decent throttle body. New air intake. What else we got? New pulleys, new belts, new coolant tank, new dipstick. That dipstick. Ooh, let me tell you about that dipstick. So, I don't know if you guys know, but those BBK long tube headers make it incredibly hard to get that dipstick tube in there, because the dipstick tube has to go in after the BBK headers. But those BBK headers had to be put on while the motor was in the car. If you put them on to the 4.6 before you put them into the car, it won't line up. You'll be having to fight with it constantly, and you'll have to bend your pipes a little bit, and it doesn't fit the way that I wanted it to, and it was going to scratch up all this beautiful paint. So I went ahead and connected the exhaust, and then put the motor in, and bolted the exhaust up. And when I went to go put the dipstick tube in, it just didn't line up by like 1/4 of an inch. And so I was like, okay, maybe I'll just bend it a little bit, bend it the absolute slightest degree and try to slide it in there. And I'll tell you right now, I fought with that dipstick for about 6 hours before I realized it's not gonna go in. And I got it so freaking close that it was probably about my pinky nail size of distance for it to just seat. It needed that much freaking distance to just, and it just wouldn't. I mean, I stayed up all night, 6 hours, on a freaking dipstick. I lost my mind when it drove me insane. I finally did a little bit more research, and it turns out this is an incredibly common problem. And a lot of guys have this problem when they put their BBKs on there. One guy even said he went through like 3 dipsticks, just snapping them in half before he was like, all right, screw it, I'm getting a new dipstick. And so my dad came in clutch and got me this Summit Racing flexible dipstick tube, and I mean, that was it. Easiest freaking thing I've ever done in my life. Putting the car together the rest of the way, I fought with a lot, and there were a lot of little things here that that I didn't really expect to have to deal with. And so I'll go ahead and show you guys the motor now, and kind of explain to y'all what I'm talking about. So this is the 4.6 that I built. Naturally aspirated. I didn't really want to throw any boost into it because it's a 4.6, it's a beautiful motor and it runs great, but I think I'll save the boost for the 5.0. And that's a little hint to upcoming project that we'll be doing here in the very, very distant future. So went ahead and got a new intake, got the Ford Performance intake. It's just the improvement manifold. It's not really like the Edelbrock or anything like that. BBK 78mm throttle body on the new big ass air raid filter. I really love the color of this thing too. It just looks so slick in there. I love that a lot. New PCV valve because the other one was just the most jank thing I've ever seen in my life. I got some of this wrap for the heater hoses and the radiator hoses. I really, really like the way that turned out. Came out super, super clean. Down here in the pulleys, we got, I pretty much just painted them all, but got the brand new tensioner, brand new water pump, brand new alternator. Power steering pump is still the old one, but still the good one. We got the new Senior Performance coils. I really, really like the way that slick black came out. It just kind of gives it a little tone to it that I like a lot, and they actually do put some pretty good power into it. We got the stock 19-pound injectors, but I went ahead with the EV1 style injectors. I don't know, I always preferred those. They sit better, they look better, and they make me feel like I'm doing something right. So here's the new dipstick tube. You can see it's a steel braided cable. I mean, beautiful. I just love the look of that. It's so slick, and it really gives off the car really well. Brand new coolant tank. The reservoir from the old one was just, it was zip tied on, and these bolt holes here were actually eaten through, so you couldn't really put any bolts in it. So the guy had taken 4 zip ties and just kind of held it on there. It was a cute little jank system, but it was time to go. What else we got here? We got new thermostat housing. I didn't really want to go like all out with this car and just start throwing crazy numbers at it and trying to get all kinds of dynoed horsepower ratings. I just wanted a nice fancy car that, you know, I built myself, and I like it a lot. I really do. Blacked out smoked headlights. Well, kind of a self-made delete kit for the grill. This just doesn't work, and the hood latch actually got eaten up. So the way I pop my hood is just pulling it from here, so that's nice. Anybody can get into my engine bay. Makes you feel real good about safety. California special wheels, and actually this is freaking ridiculous. These are 19s, and I mean, they're freaking huge. I kind of like them, you know, I like the style. They're just absolutely way too big. They're 285 Pirellis 19s, and they're huge. That's really all it is. Beautiful signature on July 4th, 2020. Let freedom ring, baby. Oh, and I actually almost forgot about this. I actually ended up deleting the EGR. The pipe fitting down there that connects to the header and comes up to here. I didn't like, you know, 1, I didn't like the look of it. 2, I didn't like what EGRs do. It's just sending hot air back into my engine, or back into my intake, and, you know, I'd rather this thing run cooler than nothing, and, you know, it's Texas, so I can run whatever the hell I want. So I went ahead and deleted the EGR, and when I pulled it, I'm actually kind of thankful that I did, because the pipe fitting down there by the header was split all the way down the tube. So my EGR was actually leaking as well. I also had a oil leak from one of my valve cover gaskets, and some other things like that, just little things that just didn't add up. I do have a video on the painting actually, and what we did. It's that galaxy blue. Love that color. And this was the saddest part of it all. I did end up breaking my AC line off. If you look it up, when you pulled this motor, Ford actually recommends and tells you to bend that line off to the side so that you can get this motor straight out. It's kind of weird, but it's only supposed to be done so many times. You can't bend metal back and forth 30 times before it breaks. And old girl just gave up. You know, it was unfortunate, and we don't have AC right now, but not a very expensive fix. All we have to do is pull this line down here to the compressor, and then this line here back to the can right there. And all we have to do is replace those. Not a huge deal, not a huge job. I'll have a video on it so you guys can watch it and see how that goes. I kind of figured that I was going to miss most of the stuff that I've done to this car, just trying to talk about it without it written down. So I made a little list of all the things that I've done to the car and what it has in it. So we have JEG steel forged H-beam rods on PI heads with BBK long tube headers, off-road X-pipe, the Ford Performance improvement manifold, which is nothing really fancy, it just kind of flows a little bit better. EGR delete, BBK 78mm throttle body, air-raid cold air intake filter, new motor mounts, senior performance coils, EV1 style 19-pound injectors, which is just the stock injector, it's just the EV1 style. NGK platinum spark plugs, brand new alternator, brand new tensioner, stage 2 clutch, stage 2 short throw shifter, new thermostat, got the Summit Racing dipstick, new coolant expansion tank, or not the expansion tank, but a new coolant tank, mass airflow sensor, new idle air control valve, and actually I had to get a new heater hose because I took old girl for a ride the other day and ended up blowing my heater hose right in half, so that was fun. I shot coolant everywhere for a good mile or two, and that was always, you know, fun to deal with. Air control valve, just because it was idling really, really rough. You know, it would pulse so freaking hard. It would go from like idling at right under 1,000 RPMs, and then it would drop all the way down to 200 RPMs, and then go up to 1,500, and then come back down to 500, and then shoot to 2,000, and it was just fluctuating so much in that range. So I went ahead and got a new idle air control valve, and that fixed my problem for the most part, but it's still doing this thing where it dies at stoplights. and it's only every once in a while. Most of the time it'll hold itself, but it idles real low, down to like 300 RPMs, and sometimes just cuts out completely. But other than that, I believe that is all I've done to it so far. Aside from little things like taking the honeycomb off, or the blacked out headlights, or just little things like that, seat covers and things like that. But mechanically in the engine, I think that's just about all I've done. So I just wanted to write all that down for you, so I didn't miss anything, because I knew I would when I started this video. But yeah, I think that's about all. Further ado, let me go ahead and get y'all a startup video, and y'all can see what she sounds like. Y'all enjoyed that video a lot. If you did, please comment, like, subscribe, all that jazz. And even though we didn't hit every topic and every story and every, all that that this car has been through, I'm sure you'll hear about it on the channel somewhere. And I guess I'll see y'all in another video. So y'all take it easy, and I appreciate y'all so much. Later, y'all.